The board overruled the CEO. They said he presented better. He's more polished. He's the safer choice. The CEO called me. I have a bad feeling about this. I said, trust your gut. The fact that he presented perfectly is the problem. A Series B CEO told me last quarter, we ran a rigorous interview process, 6 rounds, technical assessment, case study, panel debrief, and we still hired the wrong person. I asked him, what did your interview process test? He listed it: technical skills, leadership experience, cultural alignment, strategic thinking. I said, you tested everything except the one thing that actually predicts success. I've been placing executives for more than 20 years, more than 400 placements, and I'll tell you, the most dangerous candidate in any process, it's not the one who bombs the interview. That person is easy to filter out. It's the one who is phenomenal at interviewing but mediocre at operating. I call them professional interviewers. They exist at every level, but they're especially dangerous at the executive level because the stakes are so much higher. I worked with a Series C company last year that had $60 million in funding and was recruiting a chief product officer. They had a strong process, multiple rounds, thoughtful questions, diverse panel. One candidate stood out. Every interviewer gave the same feedback. Best interview I've ever conducted. Structured answers, compelling vision, referenced frameworks by name, had a story for every question. The CEO called me excited. This is the one. I said, tell me about a moment in the interview when he surprised you. Long pause. What do you mean? Was there a moment where he said something you didn't expect? Something that challenged your assumptions? Something that made you uncomfortable? Another pause. No, actually, every answer was exactly what I was hoping to hear. That's the problem. They hired him anyway. He lasted 18 months. His team described him later as a consultant who never stopped consulting. Beautiful slides, elegant strategy documents. But he never shipped anything. He was performing the role, not doing the role. Here's the principle. When every answer is perfect, it means the candidate prepared for your questions. It does not mean they lived through the situations your company will throw at them. Preparation is not experience. Performance is not judgment. The interview that reveals nothing is the one where the candidate tells you exactly what you want to hear. Let me tell you the opposite story. Series B company, $32 million in funding, recruiting a VP of engineering. 3 finalists, 2 were polished, 1 was not. The third candidate walked into the interview and within 5 minutes did something that almost disqualified her. The CEO asked, how would you approach rebuilding our CI/CD pipeline? She said, I'm not sure yet. I'd need to spend 2 weeks with your team before I could answer that honestly. The CEO's face dropped. The other 2 candidates had given detailed, confident answers to the same question. One had even drawn an architecture diagram on the whiteboard. But I'd been watching the whole interview, and here's what I noticed about the other 2. Their answers were confident because they were generic. They described what they'd done at their last company. They imported their playbook. This candidate's answer was uncertain because it was honest. She was telling the CEO, your problem is specific. I won't pretend I know the answer before I've diagnosed it. I pulled the CEO aside afterward. I said, the 2 who gave you confident answers were describing what they built somewhere else. She's the only one who acknowledged that your situation is unique. He hired her. 4 months later, he told me she rebuilt the entire pipeline, but not the way anyone expected. She found problems we didn't even know we had. The 2 other candidates would have built the wrong thing confidently. That pause, that I'm not sure yet, that willingness to say, I don't know enough to answer, that's judgment. And judgment is the only thing that predicts whether an executive will succeed at your specific company, at your specific stage, with your specific problems. Here's the question, did this candidate make me think differently about my own company? Let me tell you about the most expensive interview mistake I've ever witnessed. Series B company, $45 million in funding, VP of sales search. 2 finalists. The CEO had a strong preference for finalist A. Younger, scrappier, had built 2 sales orgs from scratch, at companies nobody had heard of. References described him as relentless and resourceful. Finalist B was the polished choice. Big company logos, managed 200 people, gave a presentation in the final round that the board described as the best sales strategy presentation we've ever seen. 40 slides, market segmentation, competitive positioning, revenue waterfall projections. The board overruled the CEO. Finalist B is the safer bet. He's been at this scale before. He presented a clear plan. I called the CEO privately. He said, I have a bad feeling about this. Finalist A reminded me of the kind of person who built my company. Finalist B reminded me of the kind of person who presents at conferences about building companies. He was right. Finalist B showed up and spent his first 90 days building the exact sales infrastructure he'd presented in his interview. Beautiful CRM dashboards, elaborate territory models, weekly forecast reviews with the precision of a Fortune 500 company. Meanwhile, the 5 reps on the team needed someone to get on the phone with them, close deals, and figure out the messaging. They needed a player coach. They got a systems architect. Revenue was flat for 2 quarters. The 2 best reps left. They told the CEO the same thing. He builds reports about selling. He doesn't sell. 9 months later, they parted ways. They went back to finalist A. He was still available. He closed 3 deals in his first month. Here's what the board got wrong. They confused presentation quality with operating quality. The interview that reveals nothing is the one where the candidate presents a plan. The interview that reveals everything is the one where the candidate asks enough questions to understand whether a plan is even the right starting point. The best executives don't show up with answers. They show up with questions. And the quality of their questions tells you more than the quality of their answers ever will. So how do you design an interview that reveals judgment instead of preparation? You ask questions that can't be rehearsed. Most interview questions are predictable. Tell me about a time you led a team through a challenge. What's your leadership philosophy? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Every experienced executive has rehearsed answers for these. They've done dozens of interviews. They know the format. They know what you want to hear. The questions that reveal everything are the ones that force the candidate into real-time thinking, not memory retrieval, not storytelling, actual thinking. Here are 3 I use in every executive search. First, tell me about a decision you made in the last year that you're still not sure was right. This question does 2 things. It tests self-awareness, and it reveals whether the candidate is comfortable with ambiguity. The best executives live in ambiguity. They make calls with 60% of the information and adjust. If a candidate can't name a decision they're uncertain about, they're either not self-aware or they're not making hard enough decisions. Second, if you joined us and discovered in the first 30 days that the problem was completely different than what we discussed today, what would you do? This separates the importers from the diagnosticians. An importer will say, I'd still execute my plan. A diagnostician will say, I'd stop, listen, and rebuild my understanding. Third, what's the question I should be asking you that I'm not? The best executives always have an answer for this. It tells you what they think matters that you're missing. It reveals their mental model of the role, and it puts them in the driver's seat, which is exactly where you want your future VP to be. Pay attention to the pauses. Pay attention to the discomfort. Pay attention to the moments where the candidate drops the polish and gets real. That's where the truth lives. Here's what I want you to do in your next executive interview. Drop one of your standard questions. Replace it with this. Tell me about a decision you made in the last year that you're still not sure was right. Then watch. Watch for the pause. Watch for whether they actually think in front of you. The pause is the signal. The polish is the noise. And one more thing. Consensus in an executive debrief is the most expensive agreement you'll ever reach. Remember that company with $60 million in funding that hired the professional interviewer? The one who gave perfect answers to every question? 8 months. That's what it cost them. 8 months and their best product manager who left because she couldn't work for someone who performed leadership instead of practicing it. The interview that reveals nothing is the one designed to confirm what you already believe. The interview that reveals everything is the one designed to show you what you haven't considered. Ask better questions, listen for the pauses, and never confuse a great presentation with great judgment. I'm Dave Carvajal. If this changed how you think about interviews, subscribe. Next week, I'm pulling back the curtain on something most founders have never seen: how precision extraction works, how the best candidates are found, engaged, and recruited when they're not even looking. That's next.